The Astral Plane, by Charles Webster Leadbeater. Introduction. References to the astral plane, or Kamaloka as it is termed in Sanskrit, have frequently occurred in the works of theosophical authors, and a considerable wealth of data regarding this realm of nature is to be found dispersed throughout our literature. However, there does not exist, to the best of my knowledge, any solitary volume to which one might turn for a comprehensive summary of the facts currently ascertained regarding this compelling domain. The primary objective of this manual is to collate and endeavor to systematize this fragmented information, and furthermore to augment it slightly in instances where novel facts have come to our attention. It is imperative to comprehend that any such additions are exclusively the product of the investigations of a select few explorers, and must not, therefore, be construed as in any way authoritative, but are presented merely for their intrinsic merit. Conversely, every precaution within our power has been exercised to ensure accuracy. No fact, whether ancient or modern, has been admitted to this manual unless it has been corroborated by the testimony of at least 2 independent, trained investigators among our number, and has additionally been verified as accurate by senior students whose knowledge regarding these points is necessarily far superior to our own. It is anticipated, therefore, that this account of the astral plane, although it cannot be regarded as entirely exhaustive, may nonetheless be found reliable within its present scope. The initial point which is necessary to elucidate in describing this astral plane is its absolute reality. Naturally, in employing that term, I am not speaking from that metaphysical standpoint wherein all but the one unmanifested is deemed unreal due to its impermanence. Rather, I am utilizing the word in its ordinary vernacular sense, implying that the objects and inhabitants of the astral plane are real in precisely the same manner that our own physical bodies, our furniture, our residences, or our monuments are real as Charing Cross, to cite an evocative observation from one of the earliest theosophical works. They will no more persist eternally than will objects upon the physical plane, yet they are nonetheless realities from our perspective for the duration of their existence, realities which we cannot afford to disregard merely because the majority of mankind is as yet unconscious or merely dimly aware of their presence. There appears to exist a significant misconception, even among theosophical students, regarding this question of the reality of the various planes of the universe. This may perhaps be attributable, in part, to the fact that the term plane has occasionally been employed with considerable laxity in our literature, writers referring ambiguously to the mental plane, the moral plane, and the like. This vagueness has induced many to assume that the information on the subject found in theosophical texts is inexact and speculative, a mere hypothesis devoid of definitive proof. No individual can acquire a distinct conception of the teachings of the wisdom religion until he possesses, at the very least, an intellectual grasp of the fact that within our solar system there exist clearly defined planes, each characterized by its own matter of varying degrees of density. Furthermore, that certain of these planes may be visited and observed by persons who have rendered themselves competent for the task, precisely as a foreign nation might be visited and observed, and that, through the comparison of the observations of those who are consistently laboring upon these planes, evidence may be obtained regarding their existence and nature that is at least as satisfactory as that which most of us possess concerning the existence of Greenland or Spitzbergen. The nomenclatures customarily assigned to these planes, considering them in the order of materiality, ascending from the denser to the more subtle, are the physical, the astral, the devachanic, the sushuptic, and the nirvanic. Transcending this latter plane are 2 others, yet they reside so far beyond our present cognitive capacity that, for the moment, they may be omitted from consideration. It must be comprehended that the matter of each of these planes differs from that of the one beneath it in the same manner as, though to a far more profound degree than vapor differs from solid matter. Indeed, the states of matter which we designate as solid, liquid, and gaseous are merely the three lowest subdivisions of the matter pertaining to this single physical plane. The astral region which I shall endeavor to delineate is the second of these great planes of nature, the one immediately superior to or resident within that physical world with which we are all familiar. It has frequently been designated the realm of illusion, not because it is in itself any more illusory than the physical world, but on account of the extreme unreliability of the impressions retrieved from it by the untrained seer. This is to be attributed primarily to two remarkable characteristics of the astral world. Firstly, that many of its inhabitants possess an extraordinary capability of altering their forms with protean rapidity, and also of casting virtually limitless glamour over those with whom they elect to trifle. And secondly, that sight upon that plane is a faculty distinctly divergent from, and far more extended than, physical vision. An object is perceived, as it were, from all angles simultaneously, the interior of a solid being as clearly exposed to the gaze as the exterior. It is therefore obvious that an inexperienced visitor to this novel world may encounter significant difficulty in comprehending the true nature of what he perceives, and even greater difficulty in translating his vision into the woefully insufficient language of ordinary speech. A prime illustration of the type of error likely to occur is the frequent reversal of any numeral which the seer is required to read from the astral light, such that he would be prone to interpreting, for instance, 139 as 931, and so forth. In the instance of a student of occultism trained by a proficient master, such an error would be impossible save through extreme haste or negligence, since such a pupil is required to undergo a prolonged and diversified course of instruction in this art of accurate perception. The master, or perhaps some more advanced pupil, presents before him repeatedly all conceivable forms of illusion, inquiring of him, "What do you perceive?" Any inaccuracies in his responses are subsequently corrected and their causes elucidated, until gradually the neophyte acquires a certainty and confidence in navigating the phenomena of the astral plane which far surpasses anything attainable in physical life. However, he must master not only the art of correct perception but also the accurate translation of the memory of what he has witnessed from one plane to the other. To assist him in this, he is trained to transfer his consciousness without interruption from the physical plane to the astral or devachanic and back again. For until this can be achieved, there always exists a possibility that his recollections may be partially lost or distorted during the void interval which separates his periods of consciousness on the various planes. When the faculty of transposing consciousness is perfectly acquired, the pupil will possess the distinct advantage of utilizing all astral faculties, not only while disembodied during sleep or trance, but also while fully awake in ordinary physical existence. It has been the practice of certain theosophists to speak disparagingly of the astral plane, and to regard it as entirely unworthy of attention. However, that appears to me a somewhat erroneous perspective. Most assuredly, that towards which we must aspire is the purely spiritual plane, and it would be undoubtedly disastrous for any student to neglect that higher development and remain content with the mere attainment of astral consciousness. There exist some whose karma is such as to enable them to develop the purely spiritual faculties initially, to bypass the astral plane for the time being, as it were, and when they subsequently encounter it, they possess, provided their spiritual development has been perfect, the immense advantage of descending into it from above, aided by a spiritual insight which cannot be deceived and a spiritual strength which is invulnerable to resistance. It is, however, a fallacy to assume, as some authors have done, that this is the sole, or even the customary, method adopted by the masters of wisdom with their pupils. Where feasible, this course obviates considerable tribulation. Yet, for the majority, such precipitous advancement has been precluded by our own antecedent transgressions or imprudences. All that we may anticipate is to earn our passage gradually, degree by degree, and inasmuch as this astral plane lies immediately adjacent to our world of grosser substance, it is principally in conjunction with it that our inaugural superphysical experiences occur. It is, therefore, of no trivial interest to those who are mere novices in these inquiries. Indeed, a lucid comprehension of its mysteries may frequently prove of paramount importance. This utility arises not merely from the capacity to interpret various phenomena of the séance chamber, of haunted domiciles, and the like, which would otherwise remain inexplicable, but also from the necessity of shielding ourselves and others from potential perils. The initial introduction to this extraordinary realm manifests to individuals through diverse modalities. Certain individuals, perhaps but once in the entirety of their existence and whilst under some singular influence, become sufficiently sensitized to perceive the presence of one of its denizens. Subsequently, because the phenomenon does not recur, they eventually persuade themselves that they were, on that occasion, the victims of hallucination. Others discover that they perceive, with increasing frequency, sights and sounds to which those surrounding them remain oblivious. Others still, and this constitutes, perhaps, the most prevalent experience, begin to recall with progressively greater lucidity that which they have beheld or heard upon that alternative plane during slumber. Among those who devote themselves to the investigation of these subjects, some endeavor to cultivate astral vision via crystal gazing or analogous methodologies. Conversely, those who possess the inestimable advantage of direct tutelage under a qualified preceptor will likely be positioned upon that plane for the first time under his specific protection. This guardianship persists until, through the administration of various ordeals, the master has ascertained that the pupil is impervious to any peril or terror he is liable to encounter. Yet, irrespective of the manner in which it transpires, the initial realization that we reside perpetually in the midst of a vast world teeming with active life, of which the majority remain entirely oblivious, cannot fail to constitute a momentous epoch in an individual's existence. So profuse and multifarious is this life of the astral plane that, at the outset, it appears absolutely confounding to the neophyte. Indeed, even for the more seasoned investigator, the attempt to classify and catalog it proves an arduous undertaking. Were the explorer of some uncharted tropical wilderness requested not merely to provide a comprehensive account of the territory he had traversed, including precise details of its flora and mineral resources, but also to specify the genus and species of every one of the myriad insects, avians, beasts, and reptiles he had observed, he might well recoil in dismay at the magnitude of the enterprise. Yet, even this affords no parallel to the impediments besetting the psychic investigator. For in his instance, matters are further complicated, firstly by the difficulty of correctly translating the recollection of his visions from that plane to this, and secondly by the absolute insufficiency of mundane language to articulate much of what he must report. Nevertheless, just as the explorer upon the physical plane would likely commence his account of a region with a general description of its topography and characteristics, so it appears prudent to initiate this brief delineation of the astral plane by endeavoring to convey some conception of the scenery that constitutes the background of its prodigious and mutable activities. Yet, precisely at this inception, an almost insurmountable difficulty confronts us regarding the extreme complexity of the subject matter. All who possess full vision upon that plane concur that to attempt to evoke a vivid image of this astral scenery before those whose spiritual sight remains unawakened is akin to describing to a blind man the exquisite diversity of hues in a sunset sky. However meticulous and ornate the description may be, there exists no certainty that the concept presented to the auditor's mind will constitute a commensurate representation of the reality. Chapter 1. Scenery. In the first instance, therefore, it is imperative to comprehend that the astral plane possesses 7 subdivisions, each characterized by its specific degree of materiality and its distinct condition of matter. Upon enumerating these from the most ethereal and least material downwards, one ascertains that they spontaneously segregate into 3 categories, divisions 1, 2, and 3 constituting one such class, 4, 5, and 6 another, while the 7th, the lowest of all, remains solitary. The disparity between the matter of one of these classes and the succeeding one is commensurable with that existing between a solid and a liquid, whereas the distinction between the matter of the subdivisions within a single class bears a closer resemblance to that between 2 varieties of solid, such as, for instance, steel and sand. Temporarily excluding the 7th, it may be posited that divisions 4, 5, and 6 of the astral plane possess, as their backdrop, the physical world we inhabit alongside all its familiar accoutrements. Existence upon the 6th division is merely our ordinary life upon this earth, devoid of the physical vessel and its exigencies. However, as it ascends through the 5th and 4th divisions, it becomes progressively less material, being increasingly withdrawn from our lower sphere and its concerns. The scenery of these lower divisions, therefore, corresponds to that of the earth as we perceive it. Yet it is also significantly more profound, for when observed from this distinct vantage point, aided by the astral senses, even purely physical objects exhibit a vastly altered appearance. As has been previously noted, they are perceived by one whose vision is fully awakened not merely from a singular perspective, as is customary, but simultaneously from all angles, a concept in itself sufficiently disorienting. Furthermore, when one considers that every particle within the interior of a solid mass is as fully and lucidly visible as those upon the exterior, it will be comprehended that under such conditions, even the most familiar objects may initially appear totally unrecognizable. Nevertheless, a moment's reflection will demonstrate that such vision approximates true perception far more closely than does physical sight. Viewed upon the astral plane, for instance, the faces of a glass cube would all appear equal, as they are in actuality, whereas on the physical plane we perceive the distant side in perspective. That is, it appears smaller than the proximal side, which is naturally a mere illusion. It is this characteristic of astral vision which has led to its occasional designation as sight in the 4th dimension, a highly evocative and expressive phrase. However, in addition to these potential sources of error, matters are further complicated by the fact that astral sight cognizes forms of matter which, whilst remaining purely physical, are nevertheless imperceptible under ordinary conditions. Such, for instance, are the particles constituting the atmosphere, the various emanations ceaselessly emitted by all living entities, and also 4 grades of an even more refined order of physical matter which, for lack of more distinctive nomenclature, must all be designated as etheric. The latter constitute a distinct system unto themselves, freely interpenetrating all other physical matter. Indeed, the investigation of their vibrations, and the manner in which various higher forces affect them, would in itself constitute a vast field of profoundly compelling study for any man of science possessing the requisite vision for such examination. Even when our imagination has fully assimilated all that is comprehended in the preceding statements, we have yet to understand half the complexity of the problem, for beyond all these novel forms of physical matter, we must contend with the still more numerous and perplexing subdivisions of astral matter. We must first observe that every material object, indeed every particle, possesses its astral counterpart, and this counterpart is itself not a simple entity, but is typically extremely complex, being composed of various varieties of astral matter. Furthermore, each living creature is enveloped by an atmosphere of its own, usually termed its aura, and in the case of human beings, this aura constitutes in itself a most captivating branch of study. It is perceived as an ovoid mass of luminous mist possessing a highly complex structure, and derives from its shape the appellation of the auric egg. Theosophical readers will learn with gratification that even at the incipient stage of development wherein the pupil begins to acquire this astral sight, he is able to verify by direct observation the accuracy of the teachings disseminated through our great founder, Madame Blavatsky, regarding at least some of the 7 principles of man. In contemplating his fellow man, he no longer perceives merely the outer appearance, exactly coextensive with that physical body. He clearly distinguishes the etheric double, which in theosophical literature has usually been designated the linga sharira, while the jiva, as it is absorbed and specialized into prana, as it circulates in rosy light throughout the body, and as it eventually radiates from the healthy individual in its altered form, is also entirely patent. Most brilliant and perhaps most easily discernible of all, though belonging to an entirely distinct order of matter, the astral is the kamic aura, which expresses, through its vivid and ever-changing flashes of color, the diverse desires which traverse the individual's mind from moment to moment. This constitutes the true astral body. Posterior to that, and consisting of a subtler grade of matter, that of the rupa levels of devachan, lies the devachanic body or aura of the lower manas, whose colors, altering only by slow degrees as the man traverses his existence, exhibit the disposition and character of the personality. Meanwhile, still higher and infinitely more beautiful, where it is at all clearly developed, is the living light of the karana sharira, the aura or vehicle of the higher manas, which reveals the stage of development of the true ego in its passage from birth to birth. But to perceive these, the pupil must have developed faculties surpassing mere astral vision. It will spare the student considerable difficulty if he learns immediately to regard these auras not as mere emanations, but as the actual manifestation of the ego upon their respective planes. If he understands that it is the auric egg which constitutes the real man, rather than the physical body which, on this plane, crystallizes within the center thereof. Whilst the reincarnating ego remains upon the plane which is his true home in the arupa levels of devachan, the vehicle he inhabits is the karana sharira. Yet, when he descends into the rupa levels, he must, to function upon them, invest himself in their matter, and the substance he thus draws unto himself furnishes his devachanic or mind-body. Likewise, upon descending into the astral plane, he constructs his astral or kamic body from its matter, though naturally retaining all other vehicles. And upon his further descent to this, the lowest of all planes, the physical body is formed in the midst of the auric egg, which thus encompasses the entire man. More comprehensive accounts of these auras will be found in transaction number 18 of the London Lodge, and in a recent article of mine in the Theosophist. Yet sufficient has been articulated here to demonstrate that, as they all occupy the same space, the finer interpenetrating the grosser, it requires careful study and extensive practice to enable the neophyte to distinguish clearly, and instantaneously, the one from the other. Nevertheless, the human aura, or more commonly some solitary portion thereof, is not infrequently one of the first purely astral objects perceived by the untrained. although in such instances its indications are naturally highly prone to misinterpretation. Although the kamic aura, by virtue of the brilliance of its flashes of color, may often appear more conspicuous, the nerve ether and the etheric double are in reality of a much denser order of matter, residing, strictly speaking, within the limits of the physical plane, albeit invisible to ordinary vision. It has long been customary within theosophical literature to characterize the linga sharira as the astral counterpart of the human frame, the term astral having generally been employed to designate all phenomena extending beyond the cognizance of our physical senses. As more rigorous investigation permits greater precision in our terminology, however, we find ourselves constrained to acknowledge a significant portion of this invisible substance as strictly physical. Consequently, we must define the linga sharira no longer as the astral, but rather as the etheric double. This appears a fitting designation, inasmuch as it consists of various gradations of that matter which scientists term ether, though, upon examination, this proves to be not a distinct substance as has been generally hypothesized, but rather a condition of subdivision finer than the gaseous state, to which any form of physical matter may be reduced through the application of appropriate forces. The appellation etheric double shall, therefore, henceforth be employed in theosophic writings in lieu of linga sharira. This modification will not only afford us the advantage of an English nomenclature clearly indicative of the nature of the body to which it refers, but will also alleviate the frequent misapprehensions arising from the fact that an entirely distinct signification is attached, in all Oriental texts, to the title we have hitherto utilized. It must not, however, be surmised that in effecting this alteration in nomenclature we are in any way advancing a novel conception. We are merely amending, for the sake of superior accuracy, the labels previously affixed to certain facts in nature. If we scrutinize the body of a newly born infant via psychic faculty, we shall discover it to be permeated not only by astral matter of every degree of density but also by several grades of etheric matter. Furthermore, should we endeavor to trace these inner bodies retrospectively to their genesis, we ascertain that it is of the latter material that the etheric double, the mold upon which the physical body is constructed, is fashioned by the agents of the lords of karma. Conversely, the astral matter has been accumulated by the descending ego, not consciously, of course, but automatically, during his transit through the astral plane. Into the composition of the etheric double must enter elements of all distinct grades of etheric matter. Yet, the proportions may vary significantly and are determined by diverse factors, such as the race, subrace, and typology of the individual, as well as by his specific karma. When one recalls that these four subdivisions of matter are constituted of numerous combinations, which, in their turn, form aggregations that enter into the composition of the atom of the chemist's so-called element, it becomes apparent that this second principle of man is highly intricate, and the number of its possible variations virtually infinite. Thus, however complicated and singular a man's karma may prove to be, the Leadbeater are capable of providing a mold in accordance with which a body precisely suited to it may be formed. One further point merits mention regarding the appearance of physical matter when viewed from the astral plane. Namely, that astral vision possesses the capacity to magnify at will the minutest physical particle to any desired magnitude, as if by a microscope, although its magnifying power is vastly superior to that of any instrument ever constructed or likely to be constructed. The hypothetical molecule and atom postulated by science are, therefore, visible realities to the occult student, although the latter recognizes them to be far more complex in their nature than the man of science has yet discovered. Here again lies a vast field of study of absorbing interest to which an entire volume might readily be devoted. Indeed, a scientific investigator who should acquire this astral vision in perfection would not only find his experiments with ordinary and known phenomena immensely facilitated, but would also perceive stretching before him entirely novel vistas of knowledge requiring more than a lifetime for their thorough examination. By way of example, one curious and exceedingly beautiful novelty brought to his attention by the development of this faculty would be. Do you want access to this and all the complete audiobooks on the channel, plus the ebook version? Click the link in the description or scan the QR code in the left corner of the screen to access our library, where you can listen to your favorite esoteric books without ad interruptions, lock your screen, or use other apps while the narration plays, and even download the ebook version to follow along as you listen. Listen on your computer via web browser, or download the app from the Play Store. After subscribing, you will receive an email with your login details, password, and step-by-step instructions on how to access the books through the Hotmart app.